over the last little while, I've become something of a mid-size three-row SUV hog. I need more space and more seats. And as such, I've driven a number of models over the last little while, as I've mentioned, and I've become I've become obsessed somewhat over the value proposition, the space, the features, and the equipment and all that, which explains in part why I am in the presence again, only about a year later, of a Honda Pilot Trailsport. It was about a year ago that I test drove a 2024, and now this is a 2025. The reason for that is I still see so few Honda Pilots on the road. In fact, they are a rarity compared to first, second, and especially third generation models. So what I want to do in the following briefer than usual video is point out 5 things about the Honda Pilot, make or break things that explain why there should be more and explain why, well, there are so few. And I'm going to start with the deal breaker. And I mentioned this last year, pricing. Honda is out to lunch. The base price for a 2025 Honda Pilot is $53,350. Now, if you compare that to 2 other SUVs that I very much like in the segment, the Volkswagen Atlas, it starts at $50,995. The thing is, yes, cheaper, yes, it's got a 4-cylinder engine, which is very adequate for the job, but it has more features, more tech, and it looks at least as good, if not better, plus the interior is a little bit nicer. And then the Kia Telluride, which starts at $50,695, which has more features, more tech, a slightly bigger V6, more powerful, whatever. And it looks at least as good as the Honda Pilot as well. That right there is a complete turnoff as a consumer, if you ask me. And let's not forget that Honda has never been very generous, or hasn't been in a long time, with these types of vehicles when it comes to incentives and rates for either a lease or a finance. The good news is that this is a Trailsport, as I've mentioned, which happens to be at $59,850, which is an enormous sum of money, the best sweet spot as far as equipment, trim, styling, and it's a deal better, more interesting, at least in my opinion, than their top trim, the new Black Edition, which is $65,100, which is a complete waste of money if you ask me. So the first and biggest, and might I add, only problem with this Honda Pilot is pricing. If Honda could revise that, I am certain, given the reputation and the capabilities of this vehicle, there would be a lot more on the road. In the following video, we're going to go over 4 things, and I can count 4 things that, so among the main considerations why consumers go for a midsize 3-row SUV, as I would, is for interior space. Things, well, I guess what's important to say here is that the Pilot is very average, which means it's just fine. So behind the 3rd row, you have 635 liters of boot space. There's actually a fair amount of space under here, more than it actually looks. What I do like is the 3rd row, when it is up, it actually reclines, so that makes it very comfortable for 3rd row passengers. When the 3rd row is down, you get up to 1,685 liters of space. So that's pretty good. Now, one of the reasons why I say the Trailsport is one of the better, or in fact the best version, is because it's the only one that you can get with captain seats in the 2nd row, meaning that the kids have a fantastic corridor to travel from one row to the other, avoiding climbing and all kinds of little arguments. Captain seats, 2nd row, comfortable, adjustable, everything works out beautifully. The door bins is one thing too. I mean, the functionality and the space. Look at the amount of space over here. And what's great in the 3rd row is that the lower cushion is actually high enough that most teenagers and even some adults can spend a fair amount of time there without, well, cramping up. We can just conclude there the space thing, where, I mean, the front is incredible. And again, the door bins, storage is fantastic. But this is one of the issues. Smaller screen, a little bit less tech, a little less fancy, a little less upscale than say you'd get in the Atlas. But that is not a deal breaker, but the space is definitely a great thing. So let's keep going. All right, so the final, well, all the reasons why this is an excellent SUV all come down or are all related to the drive. The first element is the standard for all, and has been for a while, 3.5 liter V6, which produces 285 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM. The thing with the V6 is that it is glass smooth. Power delivery is linear, and the 10-speed automatic transmission is always willing to play along. Rarely, though, once in a while, a little bit jerky, but it's not an issue whatsoever. The thing is, I don't think you heard that, is that it actually, when pushed mildly or even heavily, actually produces a lovely sound. That is in a stark contrast with everything you get, or what you get with the more and more, how can I put it? It's becoming an increasingly more common sight turbocharged four-cylinder engine in vehicles in the segment. None produce a sound like the V6. In fact, some are incredibly loud, such as the one offered in the GM products. And to boot, fuel consumption, there is very little to no improvement with the boosted 4s versus the V6. Honda says you can average between 11 and 12 liters per 100 kilometers with the Pilot. I'm averaging a little bit more, but that has to do more with me than the actual engine. But boosted four-cylinder engines, you'll average the same thing in real life. Not necessarily on paper, but whatever. So the V6, lovely V6. How much longer are we going to have a V6 in this? Difficult to say. The other thing is the ride quality. The Honda Pilot is impeccably comfortable, super smooth, refined, all of the above. And there's another good reason to consider the Trailsport, because, okay, so they all get the same McPherson front and multi-link rear layout, but the Trailsport gets 18-inch wheels, which are really lovely to boot. And so you get 250/60 profile tires as opposed to 255/60, as opposed to 255/50 profile tires. So it's another point in the Trailsport's favor. I mean, there's a combination of comfort and dampening with just a little bit of the Honda dynamism that we all love blended into it, and it's lovely. Steering, brakes, everything is great. The final aspect is the basic included safety features. So you're looking at collision mitigation, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, sorry. They're all included for the price. And obviously, if you pay a little bit more, well, you do get a little bit more. So the bottom line is, the main reason, at least in my opinion, why there aren't any Honda Pilots, or so few on the road in the greater Montreal area, is that it's just priced itself out of accessibility. Consumers are going to look at the base price, compare to the Telluride, to the Atlas, to the Highlander, and to even other models such as the Hyundai Santa Fe or Kia Sorento, and it's either less expensive or you get more kits, more features, or both, and that's what kills the Pilot. Even so, it's one of the safer models on the road, very comfortable, spacious, well put together, but there are too many alternatives to consider. And that's it.